What's up, comic book fans? And welcome to Comics Icons. Now, JJ, what they call me. And today, we got another one by my guy, Jonathan Hickman, in a 20th century and Marvel mashup with issue 1 of the 4-issue miniseries, Aliens vs. Avengers. And this one might be a banger, y'all. Or like I used to say to one of my homies back in the day, this right here, some pressure. So if you guys are ready to find out what happens when the world's greatest killers come across the world's greatest heroes, then you guys know what time it is. Let's get it. So we kick this issue off out in space with what looks to be 2 Shi'ar scientists, as they're currently disappointed that this Kree specimen failed post-implantation, and they were able to gain nothing from it, as we see a fallen face hugger on the ground. But we then find out that 4 out of 5 of their attempts at this have been successful, and one of those successes came from the Skrulls. But the problem with them is that they don't really have a home world that can be seeded. But then an alert goes off as they're talking, and they see incoming attack vessels, 4 Explorer-class frigates, and Wakandan design. And with these guys currently defenseless, they prepare to welcome their guests. Then the doors to this vessel are blown open, and in come the Wakandan strike team, who clear the way for King T'Challa and Prince Azari, the son of both he and Storm. And here we find out that there's a massive black hole beneath them causing a time dilation, meaning that hours here cost years outside of here. And they've also quarantined an entire sovereign Wakandan world because of the weapon that they've traced here. So for them, tracking down this threat comes at a great cost. But then as the prince is explaining all of this to one of his officers, another one spots the target and points it out, and in the distance, contact is made with 3 xenomorphs. So King T'Challa calls out for his son, Prince Azari, who channels electricity to wipe out these xenomorphs. And then the king requests for the leaders of this vessel to be brought before him on their knees. And then one of the scientists is brought back to T'Challa and is told that the command node was mostly empty, but that this one had been purging their systems when they reached him. He was mostly successful, but they were able to get some of the data. And not only was their weapon used on the intergalactic empire, it was also launched at least a dozen more. So it's agreed that these worlds will need to be quarantined so this doesn't spread. Although the king notes that this will be a difficult task, seeing as though the time dilation would limit their success of being able to stop this. But then T'Challa is floored when he's then told that one of the worlds this weapon was launched upon was Earth. And after hearing this, T'Challa then addresses the scientist and asks what kind of monster he is. And when the scientist responds that he is much more than that, and that he has big plans, T'Challa deduces that this man lacks the traits of benevolence, empathy, and creation, the traits of the living, and that he is no Shi'ar. In fact, he is not alive at all, but merely a machine. And now this scientist or machine is a bit offended and defends that if you prick me, do I not bleed? So T'Challa is then handed his son's sword and responds, "Let's see." And then he removes its head and then tells his prince to bring the head with. Then back on the Wakandan ship, Azari informs T'Challa that the data from the android's memory core is still being extracted. But they already know that the weapon was used on Earth, Chandalar, Spartax, and basically every other hub in our corner of the universe. And the scale of this attack is simply unfathomable. And for T'Challa, he'd spend his lifetime building an empire to leave Azari. But now instead of a reign marked by peace, there is only ash and fire. And now the only goal is mankind's oldest: survival. And then as we transition to Earth, we find out that the seed worlds were not chosen at random. But once a world is chosen for the host, the process, regardless of which world it is the same. Each seed probe carries 4 queen eggs inside it, along with 12 infected hosts in suspended animation. And then 4 locations in proximity of high-density population centers are targeted for initial infestation. placed into suspended animation on the precipice of a life cycle transition. It takes almost no time for a host to yield their hidden bounty. A xenomorph. The greatest killing machine in the history of the universe. Within an hour, these alien drones born from the chestbusters are fully grown. And within a day, a hive has been constructed so that the life cycle of an alien queen can begin. Days later, that queen is born and begins producing eggs. From there, the process accelerates. And within a week, each individual queen hive will produce a brigade of warrior drones. Within a month, an endless army. And within a year, a planet-raising horde. And remember, each seed probe contains 4 such queens. The perfect delivery mechanism for the extinction of a species. Of every living thing on Earth. Regardless of if they're baseline humans or something greater. Now, the inhuman city of Adelan could have resisted. It could have stood for thousands of years. They had a great shield that kept them separated from the outside world. But an internal rift between the haves and the have-nots created a crack in the walls. And through that, the invaders poured in. And in Atlantis, there was no record of their fall, as there were no screams to be heard, no king to save them. If there were calls for help, they went unanswered. Wakanda held out longer than most, though, but eventually they fell too. And when it was clear that it was game over for life on the Earth, the mutants skated on Krakoa and left for Mars. I guess in this universe, the fall of X didn't happen. But when the mutants ran for their safety, Apocalypse decided to stay and fight. The world had now become the arena that he's always wanted. And if he lives, he lives. If he dies, he dies. Only the strong survive. Apocalypse is all about that life. But all around the Earth, it was only the strong survive. But there was one last human city that remained. An American stronghold. No one knows how, but they were ready for what was coming. Led by an old man named Waylon, who knew what was coming like a prophet of doom. And he built a city to withstand the end of the world. But in this city, we meet an old as hell Bruce Banner and a saggy chest-plated Carol Danvers. But when we meet them, Bruce is impatiently overlooking the city when Carol comes out and asks how late she is. And his response is that she's not too late, but she's always very precise, even down to the second. And she should be back by now. And then he reveals that both Johnny and Sue Storm died in an accident, and that Reed had gotten worse when Ben and Franklin disappeared. He was convinced that the universe was conspiring to take away the only thing that he really cared about. And on Reed's deathbed, he made Bruce promise to protect his only living heir. But now Valeria is out there about to make a liar out of him because she had a plan to save everyone, and Bruce believed her. And a now distraught Bruce tells Carol that this last remaining human city isn't a city at all, but a tomb. But Carol then reveals that she has a plan of her own, that when the monsters finally break through, she plans to draw in as much energy as she can, beyond binary, and she's gonna surrender it. It won't be a tomb, but a pyre. But then when Carol gets an alert about an incoming, she knows that it's Valeria. But she's coming in hot and surrounded by enemies. So Banner wastes no time and he hulks up and leaps off to her. Meanwhile, Carol radios ahead to Miles Morales to let him know that he's got incoming. Just before the Hulk smashes down right in front of him. And not long after comes Valeria like a bat out of hell. And she's got a xenomorph hanging onto her vehicle trying to get to her. So Miles quickly snatches her up just before he can get her. And then Hulk grabs a huge chunk of concrete and then smashes it down on the vehicle carrying the alien. And then he yells at Valeria for being late. But things got a little bit complicated, she tells Banner. Everything went sideways, but now she's ready to get back home. Plus, she did manage to steal an egg. And then later, back at their base, Valeria explains to the remaining team that this egg is their best hope to win. By the time these things had become a threat, there were already too many of them to fight. But they did anyway and got into a war with perfect killing machines. It didn't take long to realize that humans were being used to make more drones. So they dug deeper into the aliens' life cycle and tried to cut them off at the source. But that's where they went wrong. They tried to stop the creatures at their implantation stage and save the people being used as hosts. But they didn't realize that as soon as the face huggers attached, that the hosts were already as good as dead. They tried everything from science to magic, and nothing ever worked. Nothing except starting sooner, which is what Valeria plans to do now. She wants to create a virus that would kill the eggs. But while Miles asks if that's possible, Bruce asks if she should do it. It could possibly mutate into something even worse than what they're dealing with now. But Carol assures Bruce that there is no worse. So Valeria should at least try. But now what Valeria needs is time to work. So she basically kicks everybody out. And then later on we find Bruce speaking with Waylon, who asks Bruce if he believes Valeria can do it. To which Bruce replies that he'd never bet against her. Then Waylon reveals that there's not much time left and his project is almost complete. And the day is soon coming when they're going to have to make a decision about the future of humanity. Do they stay and fight? Or do they run for their lives? But he knows that Valeria will have something to say about that, as will Bruce. But right now what Bruce has to say is that he thought Valeria wasn't going to make it back, and if so, he'd have blamed Waylon for talking him into letting her go. But she did come back, Waylon defends. And he reminds Bruce that not everyone has the strong outer shell that he does, but that doesn't make them weak. It's what's inside that counts. And then later Bruce decides to go and check on Valeria. But when he tries to enter the lab, his access is restricted. So he yells for Valeria to open the door since he had brought her something to eat. And then he tries to override the door. But that's when a recording of Valeria begins to play for Bruce, in which she apologized to him, but he can't come inside. She wanted to defeat them and win once and for all. She just ran out of time. But her plan was working. She used a light bender based on Sue Storm's powers, and she walked right into the hive. And then she had isolated and grabbed an egg and slowly started backing out. And she'd almost gotten away, but then she tripped over something. And then they were all over her. Then she remembers choking, and then darkness, and then waking up and knowing that something was inside of her. But she swore that before she died, she would find a way to kill every one of them. But she's run out of time and she can feel it now. And she cries out as she tells Banner to promise not to open the door. It cannot escape the lab. But Banner's like, to hell with that. And he hulks up and he smashes his way through. And then we get a Hulk versus Xenomorph one-on-one as it lunges at Hulk. But the Hulk handles his own and rips apart the Xenomorph's head and takes its acid blood like it's nothing. And then he goes to pick up Valeria's body just as the rest of the team all show up to see what happened. And they're all mortified when they see her. But that feeling then turns to panic when they realize the facehugger is loose and it's in there with them somewhere. And just then it lunges from the shadows and latches right onto the face of Miles, and he goes down, leaving everyone in shock, now scrambling to find out what to do. We have to get it off of him, Carol demands. But Bruce reminds her that we've been over this. It can't be done. He's seen it tried 1,000,000 times, and any attempt at removing it kills the host every single time. Then Waylon adds that soon an enemy will be growing inside Miles, and when it emerges, it's only going to want one thing, and that's to kill each of them. And the only choice now is to burn it. And Carol gets ready to apologize to Miles for coming to this. But then she and everyone else is shocked when Miles is revealed to be carrying the Venom symbiote, which leaves Miles and then attaches to the facehugger. We don't like this body, but it'll do for now, Venom proclaims. Parasite co-ops Parasite, and apparently symbiote triumphs Xenomorph. And Carol goes to pick up Miles and asks if he's all right, and he's like, hell no. But he's not infected. And Venom then answers for him as he and the Xenomorph wrap around Miles and tells Carol that they are fine. And now Miles has a super dope new costume, although he admittedly will not sleep again until they get the hell off of this planet. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of the issue. So what did you guys think about this issue? I thought it was pretty dope myself, and that new Miles look is pretty sick. But I also wonder about what Bruce said about Ben and Franklin Richards, that they went missing and never returned. Well, Ben is a rock, and Franklin is OP, so I wonder if they show up somewhere down the line later on. What do you guys think? And how long before T'Challa comes back? You guys know I want to hear all your thoughts and theories down in the comments. And as always, if you guys enjoyed this video and this channel, and you'd like to support the channel, then you could do so by stopping by the Comics Icon store and picking up some of this Comics Icons merchandise, including the background music heard right here in this video available for download. Or by joining the Iconic Fan Club channel membership. And there'll be a link in the description to join. But with your membership, you guys will get loyalty badges, member shoutouts, and up to 20% off of Comics Icons merchandise from the Comics Icon store, and more. Plus, we've got tiers to the memberships beginning at just 99 cents. Or you guys can donate to the channel with a super thanks. And if you're not able to do any of that, then you can still be a tremendous help to the future of this channel by dropping a like, share, and subscribing to Comics Icons for more icons in the comic book world. But ladies and gentlemen, it's about that time.